Hello, fellow travelers. It's finally time to return to the world of Lindworm and pen some more thoughts onto the logbook of a simple Lindworm traveler. In today's episode of the Forces of the Northern Tribes series, we are going to be taking a look at one of the recently released character models for the Northern Tribes, the Orc Darkmaster. So, who are these quite ominously named orcs then? As you probably know by now if you have read the sourcebook, the world of Lindworm is orbited not by one but by two moons. And when both of these moons are new, that's the darkest night imaginable in this world. And when this double new moon occurs, orcs that are born during this night are born blind for some obviously mystical reason. And these dark walkers are then destined to live their life in darkness without sight, but at the same time their other senses become so keen that they are able to effectively replace the capabilities that they lack by their other more keen senses and powers. Those dark walkers who are born at midnight are especially powerful, and they are called Darkmasters by the orcs. These Darkmasters not only have an excellent sense of hearing, and it's also said in the backstory that they can smell supernatural beings, orichalcum ore, and magic. But they also seem to have other more mystical and dare I say even magical powers about them. Darkness seems to follow them where they go, and they are able to wield darkness as a tool and as a weapon, as we are going to see when we talk about the game profile itself. It's also alluded to in the backstory that the Dark Masters seem to have some ability to maybe sense or even foresee what's going to happen in the future. And this is a tool that's really both a blessing and a curse for the Dark Masters, since the Orcish culture is so focused on living in the here and now, and they consider dwelling on the past or knowing about the future to be unnatural. And even though in the case of especially the latter, it may be helpful, it's also ominous and not something that they are eager to know and understand about. I think there's a passage in the book where Alborg himself says something along the lines of, there is no sense knowing what's going to happen since you cannot change it anyway. On the battlefield, the Dark Hunters, or sorry, the Dark Masters are excellent assassins, as we are going to see, and it's also said that they are a real danger to the dwarves of Mount Haven, since they are the orcs who are most talented when it comes to fighting in the pitch darkness of the tunnels underground the mountain ranges, and they are capable of leading their brethren in attacks against the dwarves on their own territory. It also seems from the backstory that the Dark Master is more or less second in the spiritual hierarchy of a Orcish tribe. There is anecdotal evidence in the source book that when an evoker is lost or ill disposed, the Dark Master is the orc that the others turn to for spiritual and supernatural guidance. But that's enough on the backstory. Let's talk about this extremely interesting and powerful profile on the tabletop. Here we have the top half of the Darkmaster's card, released to us by Corvus Belli, so let's take a look at it. As we can see from the points cost, the Darkmaster is not a cheap character to include in your force. He's actually a tad more expensive than many of the other characters we have access to, such as the Contender, Lotta, Hersir, and so forth. But as we are going to be seeing, this price isn't too bad for what you're getting, especially when we consider that the Darkmaster will be providing the Northern Tribes forces with a lot of capabilities that they will struggle to replicate otherwise. Darkmaster isn't much of a strategist, at least when it comes to the battlefield stuff, since they do not bring any command tokens along. This is unfortunate, but it's also something that feels pretty in balance with the points cost and the abilities that the Darkmaster actually does bring to the battlefield. As you can see, the Darkmaster is actually slightly faster than most orcs. While he does have the 10 stride charge that we are accustomed to, his movement value of 3-3 is slightly higher than the traditional 3-2 or in some cases 2-3 of the other orc troops. This is especially nice when it comes to assaulting units that the Darkmaster can't see, quote unquote see, from the get-go, does not have line of sight to, since the 3-3 movement will actually work out to be a 5+5 stride assault, which means that the Darkmaster will be assaulting 10 strides and charging effectively 12. Keep those numbers in mind, they are going to become rather important soon enough. At 4 wounds, the Darkmaster is sturdy, as most of the orc characters are, and this combined with his other defensive kit is going to make him surprisingly survivable, which is something that I really appreciate on this model. At 2 yellow dice on willpower, the Darkmaster is at the extreme weak end of a model that's capable of producing 2 successes on their willpower roll, and as we are going to see, he lacks elite, which means that getting a single success out of this willpower roll is not a given, and getting 2 is downright really unlikely. And as he also lacks the fearless keyword, you need to keep this in mind and keep the Darkmaster away from, for example, fully augmented Spirit of Thermopleurus wielding enemy units, since the Darkmaster might not be able to stand his ground and engage them without fleeing or suffering stress in some other cases. At the same time, morale value of 2 is pretty decent. It'll allow the Darkmaster to activate several times during a round, and even if they suffer some stress, they are still able to utilize that second point of morale to activate yet again. And thinking about the battlefield role that he's most commonly going to play, this is a pretty great thing. Again, a pretty standard character availability of 1, nothing to worry about here. I don't think we would be eager to wield 2 Darkmasters in most lists anyway, so let's just keep moving. Then we get to the keywords section. Obviously, Darkmaster is an orc and a character, and they are capable of joining orc hunters. Having this unit specifically called out here effectively means that even if you have a War Alliance character, the Darkmaster will not be able to make any use out of this ability, since it's only the Orc Hunters that he can join, and this also makes it more simple for us to analyze his attached profile, since there is only a single possible unit that he can be attached to, so we have the entire picture as of right now already available. Quite interestingly, the Darkmaster does have a innate dispel ability of 2 black dice, which means that your opponents should probably give casting spells at him a second thought, but at the same time, as we are going to see, the Darkmaster is quite a difficult target for spells to begin with, at least many types of spells to begin with, so I'm not sure how often this is going to be coming up, but all the same, this nicely reflects the backstory of the Darkmaster being more aware of the arcane and the mystical than the orcs around him. The moneymaker ability of the Darkmaster is Ambusher. And what Ambusher does is that it's a bit like Scout, but on some really good steroids. So when you trigger Ambusher, um, first and foremost, you obviously keep the Darkmaster off the battlefield when using this ability, which should be most of the time, obviously. And when you decide to activate the Darkmaster, you get to place them anywhere on the battlefield that's not on your opponent's deployment zone and not within 10 strides of an enemy unit that has line of sight to your Darkmaster. And then you get a full activation on the Darkmaster immediately thereafter. And this is extremely powerful since there is nothing stopping you from assaulting or charging after placing the Darkmaster. And if we go back to his movement values with a charge value of 10 strides, when we take the base of the model as part of the measurement, it's actually a 12 stride charge. And since you get to place your ambusher anywhere that's outside 10 of any enemies that can see the Darkmaster, there is a possibility of you placing the Darkmaster a tad outside of 10, even tad outside of 11 strides of the opponent's unit, and then immediately charging them. And there is very little your opponent can do to protect their units from this. They effectively have to maintain a formation where vulnerable units and prime targets for the Darkmaster are kept inside a defensive circle that does not allow your ambusher to come in and charge, but at the same time they also have to be mindful of terrain that blocks line of sight. If there's, for example, a piece of forest terrain near their units, the Darkmaster can just appear out of that forest, not having to worry about the 10 stride limitation, and then immediately assault what they are going after. And this is the type of ability, and this is the type of capability that the Northern Tribes forces, from my opinion, have been desperately in need of. And this is something of a game changer for how the faction is going to play, at least on my opinion. But let's talk more about the implications of Ambusher as we cover the other abilities and capabilities of our Darkmaster. As you can see, the Darkmaster does not have any conquest value. Boohoo, who cares? It's okay. This guy is an assassin, not a objective holder, and to be quite frank, some of the abilities that the Darkmaster would make him extremely powerful, if not downright broken, if he had a half decent conquest value on him, since he could just appear out of nowhere to capture objectives from underneath enemies. Now he at least have to appear out of nowhere and cut down or push back the enemy and take the objective, which is obviously still within his power to do. The Darkmaster's offensive breakdown is rather straightforward, and I find it to be also quite powerful for the deployment abilities and points cost that the Darkmaster has on him. As you can see, I have again calculated the effective average damage of the Darkmaster, and it sits at 4, and he has the maximum potential ceiling of 6. And this should be enough for him to assassinate weaker support type enemy characters in one go, especially if you can secure a charge so that you can reroll the dice if you don't like what you're seeing. But also he can be set to task taking chunks out of isolated enemy units and then grinding them down over time, which is a tactical capability that I, for one, was not expecting the Darkmaster to possess. Most of the damage that the Darkmaster will be inflicting comes from successes, obviously. He has an automatic one in his roll, and a red dice will provide most of the rest of these successes. There are also 2 yellow dice available, and these will sometimes chip in an additional success. There is also the possibility of scoring hollow successes from both the yellow dice and on one facing of the red dice. And these will trigger a switch that will inflict automatic wounds upon the unit attacked by the Darkmaster. And this is a really fluffy skill, really background driven skill, where the Darkmaster is able to assassinate even high defense value enemy units. He also has the ability to use a double solid special switch to add additional successes to his roll. And as you know by now, yellow dice are quite adept at providing you with solid specials, and there's even a facing with a double solid special out there. And as the Darkmaster switch is adding a success rather than subtracting a block from your opponent's roll, this switch is basically always usable no matter what your opponent is rolling, so that's pretty great. The only symbol that the Darkmaster is unable to use when attacking is the hollow special symbol, since he's not elite and there is no switch for that. But that's quite fine. The attack is powerful enough, and there is enough switches there to make use of anyway. The Darkmaster does not, however, have a push modifier. So what you see is going to be very much what you are getting. So you can't utilize the morale value of 2 in order to push out more damage on the turn that the Darkmaster appears and attacks. So that's something that you do need to keep in mind, however. The Darkmaster's defensive stats are quite impressive for an orc character. He's going to be adding an automatic block to each of his rolls, and in addition he's going to be rolling 2 blue dice, with each having a 50-50 chance of providing you with yet another block. So this means that on average the Darkmaster should be giving you 2 blocks, and he has the ceiling of 3. There is no switch ability attached to his defense roll, so you're basically just fishing for those blocks as much as you can. There is a rather weak defensive push modifier available, where the Darkmaster gets to roll a single orange die as a part of their defense, but with the aforementioned lack of any switches, you are simply looking for that single success that you might be able to get out of this. So there's a 62.5% chance of inflicting a single success against the enemy, and thus hopefully wounding them or even finishing them off. Obviously, this push modifier isn't going to be worth it against enemy units that are going to be rolling any respectable defense dice as part of their attacks. But at the same time, if your Darkmaster is surrounded by enemies and he's about to fall anyway, you might as well try and wing your opponent on the way out. But all in all, as we are going to see when we look at one additional ability, the Darkmaster's defense is quite excellent. Speaking of special abilities, let's talk about the 2 that are on the solo card of the Darkmaster. The first one is called Sharp Perception, and it has the permanent tag. And as of right now, we really don't know what this permanent tag does. There is no keyword permanent in the rulebook, and I have not seen any official confirmation in the way of FAQ or amendment to the rules that would explain this. The only reference to permanent that I know of as of the release of this video is the fact that Marhail, the refused, has an ability that can be, or a spell rather, that can be used to remove or suppress rather abilities of opposing units and models, and it has the caveat that permanent abilities cannot be suppressed by Marhail. So in the very narrowest of readings of ways of looking at the permanent tag, it's simply there to stop Marhail from using his ability to shut it off. It would make sense, as many have suggested, that this sharp perception is intended to work in a way like the War Alliance ability on Alborg and Alvard. In the sense that it's going to be always active even if the model itself is not on the table, and if this is the case, then it's an extremely powerful ability, since the Darkmaster can be laying in an ambush state, and the opponent may not be entirely aware, or at least they are not sure that the Darkmaster is there, and then when they use an ambusher or a scout unit themselves, the ability will trigger. I'm expecting us to get more clarity on how this permanent is supposed to work in the future, but let's just talk about the ability as is from here on out. What the sharp perception does is that when an opponent deploys a scout or an ambusher unit, all of your units get within 15 strides of them get to move for free and out of sequence, so effectively before the enemy gets a chance to do anything with their scout or with their ambusher. And this is really powerful, since it'll probably throw off any attack that your opponent was trying to achieve when they deployed the scout or they deployed the ambusher. In the case of, for example, scouting Telia onto the field in order to take a shot at one of your characters or units, well, if sharp perception is in play, you are then able to move the said unit and or character away from Telia, thus ruining their potential kill shot. At the same time, if an enemy ambusher, like for example in a mirror match another Darkmaster appears, you are able to hopefully move your units away from the Darkmaster and ruin their charge or their assault. So this is an extremely powerful counter ability that'll have a strategic impact on what your opponent is able to do and what they are able to try, since they have to play around the fact that sharp perception might be part of your list. This may actually even lead into a situation where your opponent is playing around a Darkmaster that's not actually there. You might have something else hidden in ambush or scouting, and your opponent is playing around the fact that okay, there is sharp perception in play, there is an ambushing assassin out there, while in truth there is not. And this is also an extremely powerful facet of the Darkmaster. He's working for you even when he's not actually in your list. Then we get to the ability that will complete the unholy trinity of high wounds attribute, excellent defense, and this Coated in Shadows as the defensive triumvirate of the Darkmaster. Coated in Shadows is a passive ability that protects the Darkmaster by stopping enemies from beyond 8 strides from targeting him with ranged attacks, spells, skills, passive skills, and command skills, which effectively means that unless your opponent is willing to engage the Darkmaster in melee or get uncomfortably close to him, he is immune to most range effects, which means that solving a Darkmaster that's now appeared to the battlefield is going to be a tall order for your opponent. They can, for example, just reassign Telia to take a shot from across the board at your Darkmaster, which is extremely cool and extremely powerful. This ability is, however, not only restricted to being useful against ranged attacks and ranged attack-like abilities. Instead, it also inflicts the disarmed state against any enemy unit that chooses to perform a melee attack against a Darkmaster. And since this disarmed state is immediately imposed upon the declaration of a melee attack, it's going to be applicable for the said attack, and you don't have to wait until the next time that unit is attacked to make use of it. So it effectively is going to mean that you will have the ability to shed a single dice from your opponent's or a automatic symbol from your opponent's roll that includes at least one success. So you are getting your 2 blue dice on the defense, you're getting your automatic block, and then you are shedding a success, or in the case of the red die, maybe even 2 successes worth of damage, and then you still have your 4 wounds to fall back to, and you can't be shot from a long range. So this whole package, this set of defensive abilities really does make the Darkmaster a more three-dimensional character than the traditional glass cannon assassin. Actually, the Darkmaster is a surprisingly durable and difficult to handle unit that can not only be used to assassinate weaker enemy targets, but he can also be used to tie down important enemy units, holding them in place, stopping them from advancing you, maybe even sandwiching them between your units, or forcing them to endure opportunity attacks from the Darkmaster as they try to disengage. And also it gives him the possibility of grinding down a weaker unit over a period of several activations, since a weaker enemy unit is unlikely to be able to push meaningful damage through to the Darkmaster, and as long as you have enough activations to spend, the Darkmaster can then take chunks out of the unit every time he's attacking, and every time the unfortunate enemy unit decides to retaliate, boom, there goes the Coated in Shadows, you get to apply Disarmed again, and then they have to contend with your high defense and high wounds attribute to boot. So I really love this ability. It's a great addition to the Darkmaster. Not only is it very very appropriate for his backstory, but it also makes him an extremely powerful warrior on the battlefield. Speaking of warriors, let's take a quick look at how the Darkmaster can also be utilized as a leader for your lesser orc warriors. The Darkmaster is an officer type character, so he effectively adds another unit to or another model to any unit that he joins, raising the threshold after which they will suffer impaired performance, and also he will be able to detach to a single character if the unit itself is going to get wiped out. As a attachment, the Darkmaster does add a point of conquest to your Orc Hunters, which will in effect create a Conquest 2 unit, which can be further augmented to Conquest 3 if you are able to combine their attack with the Orc Commander aura effect from the contender. When it comes to the abilities that the Darkmaster grants the Orc Hunters, he's going to be giving them 2 passive skills. Firstly, Accomplished Infiltrator will mean that the Orc Hunters gain the ability to scout. This turns a box standard melee infantry unit into a dangerous flanking unit, and they are more heavy duty than something like the Tundra Marauders, for example. But then again, we do have to remember that the Northern Tribes do have access to some excellent scout units in and of themselves, such as said Tundra Marauders, and for example the skin changers that adopt the totem of the Arctic fox. The Darkmaster will also provide their joint Orc Hunter unit with Coated in Shadows, and unlike somebody like Njord the Merciless and his namesake ability, this isn't a watered down version, but this is the real deal, which means that the Orc Hunters joined by the Darkmaster are going to be effectively immune to ranged attacks originating from outside of a stretch from them, and they are going to be more difficult to inflict damage upon in melee, thanks to the ability to inflict the disarmed state on enemy units that are choosing to attack them. While these buffs do seem quite excellent, we do have to remember that the Darkmaster is foregoing his own ability to use ambush, which is what I consider to be his main selling point if you choose to make this attachment happen. So I'm not entirely sold on whether having the Darkmaster join an Orc Hunters unit is going to be worth it from this point of view. Also, what happens to sharp perception? Does it remain active because of the permanent tag, or does the Darkmaster effectively lose it when he joins the unit, since it does not appear on this part of his card? In all honesty, I don't know. But in either case, I'm not going to be rushing to add my Darkmaster to my Orc Hunters. We have other excellent Orc officers for that job, so I don't think that's going to be a big problem. When it comes to straight up additions to the profile of the Orc Hunters themselves, as you can see, the Darkmaster will add a point of morale to the unit, which means that they are able to activate more in a round than otherwise would be the case. But at the same time, as you can see, the Darkmaster does not actually provide any additional willpower to the unit, which is going to leave them extremely susceptible to any willpower effects and breaking if they suffer more stress than they have morale. So this is going to be the Achilles heel of the unit, I fear. The Darkmaster will be adding a red dice to the unit's attack, and this is quite a powerful buff to the unit, but at the same time he does not provide any additional offensive switches, nor does he provide any push modifiers for that explosive damage output from a round of hard fighting. So all in all, the buffs to the unit's attack are rather mediocre. Pretty much same goes for defense, no additional switches, no push modifiers, just a single automatic block symbol. And while this can be used by the Orc Hunters to deflect damage back to their opponents via their switch, or when combined with Coated in Shadows, it can be used to stop the unit from suffering damage, losing a combat, taking stress. At the same time, the Orc Hunters themselves don't have ways of making use of many of their symbols on the defense, so I'm not sure that the Darkmaster is the best addition here either. And all this leads us neatly into the end analysis. The Darkmaster is truly a terror-inducing assassin who is probably going to be haunting the nightmares of the opponents of the Northern Tribes from here on out. Beyond being a dangerous killer who's going to be taking out vulnerable enemy characters and units by himself, the Darkmaster also does provide a surprising amount of utility to the force that they are joined by, and also they will give Northern Tribes players access to board control capabilities that they were previously lacking, effectively denying areas of the table or forcing your opponent to assume formations that may not be otherwise optimal in order to protect and safeguard their units against attacks by the Darkmaster. Ambusher means that the Darkmaster can appear effectively out of thin air and then engage enemy units that need to be taken out or in the very least tied down. Obviously, you should be careful to target exposed enemy units that will either be unable to fight off the Darkmaster or the enemy has to invest significant resources in order to send other units to reinforce them in melee. But if you do choose to charge the Darkmaster head along into a strong enemy unit, there is a strong chance they will get wiped out either by the unit themselves or by supporting units. So take a long and hard look at the flanks of your opponent's force and see if there's anything worthwhile there to attack. At the same time, there is also a lot of value in keeping the Darkmaster hidden for as long as possible, since your opponent's opposing forces' defensive posture and defensive structure is bound to be breaking up as the game goes along, and a surgical strike by the Darkmaster is going to have potentially more value in these situations. Sharp perception will allow the Darkmaster to some extent protect the Northern Tribes force from opposing scout and ambusher strikes, which is an extremely powerful ability, especially if the reading of permanent tag is going to result in a situation where the Darkmaster does not actually have to be deployed on the battlefield in order to make use of this ability. If you so choose, there is the possibility of attaching the Darkmaster to a unit of hunters in order to create a powerful combination, but I at the moment do believe that this might not be worth it in most situations due to the fact that the Darkmaster is going to be losing his calling card of Ambusher, and there is quite an opportunity cost in this combination. You could be wielding some of your other excellent scouting units, or you could be attaching another more powerful or more strategically compatible unit to your or character to your hunters unit. So I am probably going to be passing on this most of the time. All in all, I really do think that the Darkmaster gives the Northern Tribes company that he is a part of a level of proactive threat management, reactive positioning, and pinpoint killing power or tying down power that's really hard to replicate as of right now. And before we got a glimpse at Irjavik's card, I was considering putting it in this piece that I think the Darkmaster is an auto-include in all Northern Tribes forces from here on out. As we are going to be getting to know exactly what all the keywords on Irjavik's card are going to be doing, I would imagine that in some lists we are going to have that ambusher position filled by her instead, but until then I think the Darkmaster is going to be having a quite a full workload in the Northern Tribes companies, and even going forward the Darkmaster and Irjavik are going to be doing different types of things, and if you include coal into that mix at different price points also. So I would imagine that this very sinister orc is going to have their place in our forces going forward into the far, far future. Okay, it's time to end this analysis piece here. Thank you again for joining me and hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.